Three, two, one, here we go. Hello, everyone. I'm Brian the Rain Man Lucas. Welcome to Rain Man's Take, observations on the world we live in. We're going to take a deeper dive into topics of interest to me, including politics, current events, history, popular culture, and social issues. You'll find the diversity of topics refreshing. In our clickbait, soundbite society, you rarely get the whole story. Rain Man's Take interviews interesting people as well as peeling back the onion on specific topics, all with the goal of getting people to think more deeply about a subject. Hey guys, it's the Rain Man. How you doing? Just want to wish you all a happy new year. This is the final raindrop of Rain Man's Take season 1 in 2020. So I'm very excited about that. Feel like we got some great momentum going into 2021 and the start of our second season, which I believe is in March. So keep an eye out for future interviews. I'm really trying to up my game with some great content for you. So what I wanted to do today real quick is I've done about 30 episodes so far. So for the people who have watched, you kind of have a little bit of an idea of where I'm coming from, what I enjoy, what I don't like, etc. However, I did have a guest of mine after we had our interview. He actually wrote me an email. He said, "Hey, listen, I know who you are, but I, just like to know you a little bit more about your backstory. Like, what brought you to this point? Why are you doing this, etc." And so I thought it was actually a great opportunity for me at the end of my first year doing Rain Man's Take, just to do a quick, give you guys a quick background about me, kind of where I'm coming from and why I'm coming from that position. So, real quick, growing up, I grew up middle of 5 in Massachusetts, a solidly middle class upbringing, Roman Catholic family, so mass every Saturday. In school, I wasn't a very good student. I was excellent at sports, and that kind of followed me all throughout my my academic career. Where did I get my values from? Again, middle class kid, public school, summer jobs, anything from painting houses to working in an auto plant in my hometown, to getting up in the middle of the night in the snow in the winter to shovel snow before the plow came. So values taught from my family, from going to church, and also from playing sports and coaches. They teach you competitiveness, toughness, working as a team, leadership, all those sorts of things. Accountability, etc. Early on, I was identified as a leader. I was captain of all my sports teams when I was in high school. I liked being around everybody, and I tried to help out when I could. Some of the big takeaways from my young life was I learned to have tough skin, primarily from the competitiveness of sports and work and playing in a team environment, be able to handle myself, be able to handle any type of difficulty, criticism, teasing. And that happens to everybody. And you can run and hide or you can stand up. And I think sports taught me that you have to stand up and defend yourself. And I did, and I learned some valuable lessons there. Primarily have some tough skin. My college experience from high school, I did a postgraduate year, an extra year of high school at a boarding school in New England. That was a great experience. Then I went down to Johns Hopkins University and I played lacrosse on an athletic scholarship. So lacrosse, again, and sports was the main focus of my academics down there. Wasn't the best student, but started all 4 years on the lacrosse team and was a captain my senior year. Things that stuck out about my 4 years at Hopkins was how laser focused I was on playing lacrosse and getting as good as I could at the game. Some of the experiences that will stick with me forever. My freshman year, we played in the national championship. I was a freshman on the starting midfield team, and if you depending on what lacrosse kind of websites you look at, some people in the lacrosse community have voted that game, Syracuse versus Johns Hopkins University in 1989, is considered one of the best lacrosse games ever played. So I had a small part in that, which I thought was very cool. So those experiences have stayed with me this whole time. With that being said, obviously competing at the highest level of anything was a privilege and an honor, and you learn some serious life lessons when you do that. And then the third thing from my college experience is I honestly had no idea how the real world worked. I was so focused that I was a little bit of a hayseed when it came to what was going on outside the campus. And it's funny because you take a guy like me, and then you take some of my friends who grew up in New York City or Long Island, and just how savvy those guys were. A lot of those guys went to work on Wall Street. At the time, none of that stuff interested me. I was at Hopkins. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. Kind of in keeping with that idea that I had no idea what was going on, how the world worked. I actually did an interview with for a Morgan Stanley financial analyst position, if you can believe that. And this will show you just how crazy it was. For that interview, I borrowed a friend's pair of dress shoes. I borrowed another friend's suit. I wore my shirt and my tie and my belt and my socks. So I must have looked obviously not impressive. I obviously didn't get the job, but just kind of goes to show you that I really just had no idea what I was doing. I never really cared about it because I was so focused on lacrosse. Well, one day in one of the cafeterias, there was a Marine recruiter there, set up a table, was talking to kids, and sure enough, I met him. We struck up a great conversation, and basically that one meeting kind of set the stage for the next 15 years actually 20 years of my life. And what I found fascinating about that whole experience was at the time I wanted to fly. I wanted to fly jets. I actually had applied to the Naval Academy in high school and had no chance of getting in, although I did get a congressional sponsorship for the application, but never made it beyond that. So flying and being in the military was something that was kind of always in the back of my mind. My dad was a Navy commander, and so the military kind of life, I was a little bit familiar with it. So it was kind of in the back of my head. I put it way in the back of my head when I got to Hopkins to play lacrosse. But once I met that recruiter, I think it was my junior year, I kind of got the ball rolling again, and I ended up going into the Marine Corps with a guaranteed air contract to fly if I was successful in getting through officers candidate school and becoming a Marine officer. But one of the things that was very funny about that situation is that at that meeting, I told the Marine recruiter that I didn't have an engineering background, so I wasn't really sure if I was going to make the cut in terms of grades to become a pilot, because all the other military services, Air Force and Navy, all required you to be some kind of an engineering major. And it was, thankfully for me, the Marine recruiter said to me, he said, well, actually, we're more impressed with the fact that you're going to be captain of the lacrosse team than your grades. So thankfully that was the case, because 2 weeks after college, I was at Officers Candidate School in Quantico, Virginia, becoming a Marine second lieutenant. And I was down there with the agreement that if I were to make it through boot camp, Officers Candidate School for officers, if I was to make it through that and become a second lieutenant, then I was guaranteed a position down at flight school in Pensacola. So that kind of started my Marine Corps career. Again, I flew helicopters my entire time in the Marine Corps. Some of the highlights, or some of the things that I remember the most about the Marine Corps, was you learn to have very thick skin. Now, I mentioned earlier, playing sports and playing team sports in particular, you learn to get thick skin just because there's constantly teasing going back and forth between teammates. Well, that gets ramped up to the next level. So in the Marine Corps boot camp, dealing with the egos in a helicopter squadron ready room, and just a general competitiveness of Marine Corps officers, you need to have very thick skin in order to be successful. Leadership, obviously, the Marine Corps prides itself on making amazing leaders. And so that being an officer and leading people was an amazing experience, and those lessons have definitely helped me throughout my adult life. With that being said, you literally in the Marine Corps deal with every type of human being, no matter the race, the color, the sex, the sexual orientation, whatever the case may be. You're all in the same spot working for the same result, for working on the same mission. And so that really helped you kind of, or helped me really learn to deal with different types of people throughout the spectrum. The biggest thing about my Marine Corps career, and the one that's had the most lasting impact on me, was the war in Iraq. I flew 2 combat tours, one in 2004 and one in 2005, in an area called Al Taqaddum, which was right between Fallujah and Ramadi, one of the legs of the Sunni Triangle, kind of right at the thick of the fighting after the initial invasion. Some of the things that really stand out for me and that have stayed with me this entire time since the war, these last 15 years, was one, it was an unbelievable life experience. Just the intensity of combat operations was something that was pretty amazing to experience, and something that I'll never forget. Just the intensity level of everyday life, of constantly being at some level of alertness as to anything that may happen. The enemy dropping bombs on the base, shooting rockets into the base, getting shot at from the ground in an aircraft. All those things, you just never really were able to relax. So there was an intensity level that I have not felt since I got back from there, and that was just an amazing and scary and intense thing to experience. It was after my second deployment that really the curtain started to get pulled back. I started to really kind of understand how the world works, and I was not impressed with it. As a matter of fact, it was a very frustrating experience. A couple things. One, I read a ton while I was over there. I read the Bible. I read books on Islam. I read books on the conflicts between Islam and Christianity over the last 1,000 years. I mean, I was a voracious reader while I was there. 2 major experiences that I had over there that really stuck with me. One was when we were fighting in Fallujah. It was about a 2 or 3 week period, and there was constant combat operations going in and out of the city. And you'd come back from a mission and you'd go to the chow hall to get something to eat. And in the chow hall, CNN's being played on the television. They're actually reporting on what's going on in Fallujah, the battle. And what they're saying and what's actually going on the ground just didn't jive for me. So now all of a sudden I'm like, okay, what's going on here? Not really understanding why, but they were not, it seemed like what I was experiencing, what they were talking about, it seemed like they were 2 different things. Second one was most of the politicians at the time always bragged about going over there and going over to Iraq to meet the troops. Well, one day we got the word that a congressman, I believe from Colorado, was coming in. We found a young kid that was in the squadron that was from Colorado. We made him jump through all sorts of hoops to go get the cleanest uniform he could find, and then go wait over at the VIP station for this particular congressperson to show up. And they never did. And then you hear all these people bragging about them being over there and talking to the troops. And you wonder just how many of them never made it past the Baghdad International Airport, which is where most of the dignitaries flew in and out of. So now I'm really starting to get frustrated. I'm really starting to understand the narrative and what's being told and what we're reading aren't necessarily what's going on in the real world. And then finally, when we left, you realize that KBR, which is an offshoot of Halliburton, basically had no bid contracts to build all of the bases in not only in Iraq, but I'm sure Afghanistan as well. And you're talking, that contract is billions and billions of dollars. And of course, that was Dick Cheney's former company. And then you just really start to say, coincidence? I don't think so. What's really going on? So by the time I got back, I was really frustrated, and I really wanted to know what was going on. At the time, a very good friend of mine who was in one of the towers in 9/11 that survived running down the stairs and going outside and seeing people landing on the ground from the 100th floor, jumping out of the buildings, down into the subway stations underneath the Twin Towers, and seeing storefronts already bombed out. So he was also very skeptical of what was going on, and I would say almost downright conspiratorial. However, he had an amazing book collection, his library, and I read everything. I read everything from your typical kind of historical accounts of events all the way to downright conspiratorial stuff. And I'm glad I did that because I really started to expand not only my views, but also my interest in learning more, so that if I hear something and I got a question about it, I'm not just going to stop right there. I'm going to research it down and continue down past the layer of what the mainstream narrative is. So I did that for several years after I got back. I mean, I read all of his books. We talk all the time about it. And quite honestly, I had a little bit of a midlife crisis, and then I realized nothing was what I'd been taught, and nothing is what it seemed, and that pretty much was across the board in all the institutions of religion, of government, of economics, and it was very frustrating for a while. But once I came to grips with this idea and began reading and questioning and being critical of what I was hearing or reading, believe it or not, I actually became happier. I became more optimistic because I now kind of started to understand how the game was being played and what they were trying to do in terms of how they are projecting certain narratives. And as a result, I love talking to people about pretty much any topic, because I feel like I've got a little deeper grasp than most, because I've read as much as I have over the last decade and a half, that I can see what we're being told is not even scratching the surface, and usually is inaccurate. So what I've found with all the reading that I did is actually there are a lot of expert researchers, historians. There are a lot of experts out there that are outside of the mainstream, and they're doing amazing work. That's right. Currently, it seems like now a lot of the institutional dogmas are actually starting to come around to a lot of what these people have been saying in the past. And so I find that fascinating. But these people have been around for a long time. You just have to know where to look for them. So guys like Graham Hancock, Lawrence Gardner, Zachariah Sitchin, Robert Schoch, G. Edward Griffin, Jordan Maxwell, Jim Marrs, just to name a few. I try to get the information from as many sources as I can and not rely on what the mainstream's telling me, because again, I'm very skeptical of what I'm hearing on the television, what I'm reading in the mainstream news today. My views on why I wanted to start RAINMAN'S Take. Politically and socially speaking, I'm very skeptical of people in power. I think everybody should be. I take everything that they say with a grain of salt, that knowing that there's an angle or an agenda behind it. I'm very well read on both sides of most issues. I just want the truth, whatever that is. I'm constantly looking for it. Who knows if we'll ever find it. I have 3 basic rules when watching news or reading something. 1, there's always an agenda. 2, when in doubt, follow the money. And then 3, at the very least, take both sides of an issue, and then think about what the middle looks like. And generally speaking, that's probably going to be the most accurate depiction of what's going on out there. And then base your views on all of those things. And if you need to, research more to really make sure that your views are accurate. I believe that there are forces out there that want to see the concept of a free United States of America destroyed. And if you don't believe me, just read what the news has been talking about, this whole concept of a great reset. Biden's pushing it. A lot of other elites and politicians are pushing it as well. Essentially, a great reset to get back into a more globalist society. What the World Economic Forum's talking about and what they're predicting over the next 10 years and where they want to see the world in the next 10 years. The International Monetary Fund, the IMF, any of the Soros foundations. And then if you really want to freak yourself out, go back into the 40s and 50s and even the 30s and read about some of the American elites, what they were saying about what direction they want the world going in the future. I am not a racist, misogynist, or homophobe, or any other label that are being thrown around right now. I enjoy most everyone I meet. I treat everybody with respect, and I enjoy listening to them and getting to know them, however short or long a period of time we have together. Things I won't tolerate are threats to me or my family, groups trying to destroy my way of life or the American way of life as I see it, terrorists, Islamists. Now, do not confuse that with people of Islamic descent, because those are different. the official BLM movement because they've flat out said that they're a socialist trained, Marxist trained group, and one of their main goals is to fundamentally change the United States, as is the motivation for Antifa. So those things I have trouble tolerating anything that those things stand for. I base who I interact with, like, and respect by the content of their character, not the labels that are so familiar in the world today. Obviously paraphrasing Martin Luther King there, but I've got friends, and I've had friends in the past from all races, religions, sexes, sexual orientations. The people that I know and I enjoy hanging out, regardless of what label you put on them, are good people, and that's most important to me. One of the things I think is wrong with society right now is that those labels that are being put on people are actually promoting segregating all of those groups as opposed to desegregating our society. And I don't think I think we're going backwards as far as that's concerned. Things I can't stand: lack of integrity and accountability, hypocrisy, entitlement, the victim mentality, and the cancel culture. Those are in full display right now over this last year, and I find those very frustrating and not productive at all. And I just don't agree with most of what they stand for. I believe the current iteration of our system attracts sociopaths, narcissists, and egomaniacs. And there needs to be structural changes to it. And one off the top of my head would be some form of term limits for across the board, because right now, essentially, the only branch of our government that has a term limit stipulation is the president. I'd like to see something with Congress, as well as with the House of Representatives, as well as the Supreme Court. I'm an independent thinker. However, if you were to label me in today's system, I would align more with the Republicans over the Democrats, or the right over the left. Perfect example is I agree with almost everything that Dan Crenshaw, Republican congressman from Houston, what he stands for, how he conducts himself, what he's hoping to accomplish for the United States. And on the flip side of that, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez from New York, the congressman from New York, I disagree with almost everything she has to say and her outlook on where she wants to take the United States. So take that for what it's worth. I base that on the experiences that I've had growing up, sports, the military, etc. I align more with the Dan Crenshaw over in AOC. They're public figures, so they're fair game for criticism, as I guess I am with this podcast, which is fine. I feel like I can defend most of my positions pretty well. So bottom line is, we may disagree, and I welcome that, but I will never let those disagreements ruin friendships. If you feel otherwise, then I'm sorry about that, and I feel sorry for you. I wish people, it kind of goes back to that tough skin. You know, if you don't agree with, you don't have to hate them. It's not that finite. It's not that crystal clear. You can actually have agreements and still like somebody. And I wish that was the case. And I hope that is the case for the majority of the people out there. I will treat you with respect, but not with kid gloves. And I respect the same in return. Rain Man's Take will also dive into culture and history. Basically, it's anything that interests me. I love history, huge Knights Templar fan. Anything Knights, anything medieval, I'm a big fan of. Ancient cultures anywhere on earth. I love traveling and going to see these places in person and really experiencing them firsthand. Modern geopolitics and the grand chessboard concept of countries interacting. I also find that fascinating. And just a quick plug, I'm going to be interviewing Jim Rickards here in a couple of weeks. And he's an expert in geopolitics, geoeconomics, and it's going to be a really fascinating discussion about the current state of affairs and where we see the future, where he sees it going in the future. So stand by for that. Shameless plug there. I interview people who I find interesting and their subject matter fascinating. And I figure if I'm interested in it, then there are probably other people out there that would be just as interested and would enjoy learning more about that person on a deeper level and what it is that they're an expert in. So my biggest criticism of myself, I would say that I get too excited when I'm debating or having a spirited conversation. When excited, I tend to raise my voice and talk over people. I need to work on that. My job is not to censor, silence, or even convince. It should be to calmly explain my position, why I feel that way, and then let's have a conversation about both sides of an issue. My late father-in-law was a master at this, and it's something that I definitely am trying to work on. It's that old adage that control your emotions or somebody else will, and I need to work on that. The ability to separate myself emotionally from the positions that I have. So, in conclusion, and I didn't want to take up too much more of your time, I just want to say this, and I'm going to read it verbatim just so I don't miss anything. I did this introduction so you'll know where I'm coming from when I air my takes. I'd like this to reach as many people as possible and would be excited if old friends and family reached out as well. I have absolutely no problem with people disagreeing with me on my positions. I did this introduction to explain my life experiences and makeup as a person, how those shaped how I see the world and hopefully how I conduct myself in the world. I realize there are a lot of people who won't share my views, and that is okay, and I actually welcome that. We need to be able to have civilized discourse with people we don't agree with. I enjoy the healthy, sometimes spirited debates with each side ideally listening to each other. This is very difficult in today's polarized world, but more important than ever because of how polarized it's become. Lines of communication should not be closed down or shut down or censored. The English comedian Ricky Gervais said it the best: just because you're offended doesn't make you right. So that's definitely something to think about. Get both sides out there and see who has the better argument and the better path forward. I will never defriend somebody because of their political views. I have thick enough skin to be able to still be friends with somebody, even with polar opposite views. My take has always been that just sitting around the dinner table, we have more in common than we think, and we just seem to get caught up in the mainstream media narratives that put us into two camps only. My view is that that's being done deliberately to divide us and make us stop talking to each other because we are then easier to control. A population divided, fighting amongst itself, is not paying attention to what their leaders are doing. And in my view, that's exactly what they want, and mostly for nefarious reasons. Stay vigilant of your freedoms and your ability to be a self-determining individual. Happy New Year, everybody, and thanks for listening. I look forward to our upcoming season 2 of Rain Man's Take. And I'll finish off with this. If you're in the military, the police department, fire departments, or first responders, if that's you out there, thank you very much for your service. Continue the great work. Stay safe. We'll see you all in 2021. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching Rain Man's Take, Observations on the World We Live in. If you like the content, don't forget to hit the subscribe button below. You can also follow Rain Man's Take on Instagram at Rain Man's Take. Also, check out our website at www.rainmanstakepodcast.com and send your comments to rainmanstake@gmail.com. Keep an eye out for future podcasts, which will be coming out every Thursday at 5 p.m. West Coast time.